What's up, Cowboys fans? What's going on this morning? This is a very exciting time for football fans in general, but especially for the Dallas Cowboys, because we always know, we're talking the offseason, I guess. That's one of the number one things, especially for most teams throughout the league, but especially for us as a fan base. Their offseason is where the Dallas Cowboys are always in the conversations. You're going to have national media, local media, finding new narratives, new things to talk about. But the Dallas Cowboys going into this upcoming draft, which is going to be Thursday through Saturday. So Thursday, April 25th to the 27th, which obviously the first round will be on April 25th. And the Dallas Cowboys are sitting right now with the 24th overall pick in that round as of right now, because we do know sometimes the Dallas Cowboys have found themselves in situations where maybe if they don't see a guy that they're I guess they just fell in love with in some of the guys that are still available, and maybe they feel like they can kind of trade back a little bit and maybe gain another pick, which we do know Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, they love hoarding those picks sometimes. And to me, I'm going to say personally, we have found some diamonds in the rough, I guess you'll say, some late third, fourth, fifth, sixth round play. It's never know with the Dallas Cowboys. We have found some success with some of these later round guys, so I'm not going to completely write off that route. But the Dallas Cowboys have a very interesting situation going on with the wide receiver position right now. We do know CeeDee Lamb is going into the final season of his contract with the Dallas Cowboys right now. I believe he's due to make a little over $17 million this year, and he's going to be an unrestricted free agent in the 2025 offseason. So the Dallas Cowboys are going to have to sit there and ask themselves, how much value do you place in CeeDee Lamb? I think CeeDee Lamb, we're talking about a top 2, top 3 potential type wide receiver in this entire league. So you have got to get that deal done. I'm sure the rest of this team, this front office, I will say, wants to get that deal done. But you know, Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones, for some reason, they love playing hardball when it comes to these negotiations, but you do not want to rub your star players. And I'm talking about your star players in the sense of these are game breakers. CeeDee Lamb is a game breaker. I don't care what anybody says. This is a guy that you want to have on your team going forward for the future. Whether we don't have to get into the conversation of the Dak Prescott situation, but over the last couple of days, you've seen Dak Prescott pretty much say at this point, he is very, I guess you want to say he sounds comfortable, but he kind of, I guess you want to say alludes to the fact that he would be very comfortable, okay, and he's not scared, the words he used pretty much. He has no fear of if he has to find himself in a new situation, meaning with a new franchise, new organization going forward. If the Cowboys and he are and his team are not able to, I guess, come to an agreement on a deal that will keep him here as the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. I feel like there's a lot to kind of take out of that, because one thing you have seen is CeeDee Lamb has found some production playing with a Dak Prescott, and they have that natural chemistry that we saw, especially going throughout the entire last season. CeeDee Lamb catching over 1,700 yards. We're talking about, obviously, that is a chemistry thing, and you cannot just build that organically with just anybody. So Dak Prescott, if he's going to be your quarterback, you have got to figure out what's going on with his wide receiver position going forward. But if he's not, figure out where exactly you're going to look for the next quarterback. But the number one thing you have got to do for any quarterback, I don't care who it is lock up your star players, meaning CeeDee Lamb has got to get that deal done. You've got to get that deal done, with CeeDee Lamb, because at the end of the day, he's going to want to get paid. When you're showing out and you're making these plays, of course, obviously, a lot of people would have loved for him to have a much better postseason this year. But when you're talking about a guy that has that ability, you don't just find that anywhere. So you have got to lock down a guy like CeeDee Lamb going to the future. Obviously, we saw what Brandon Cooks was able to bring to this team. I believe he will also be a free agent after this year. I'm going to say that's obviously something the Cowboys are going to find much easier to replace. Brandon Cooks, again, we're not sliding him in any sense. But Brandon Cooks, he made some plays for the Cowboys last year, especially once we decided to change the approach that we were kind of following earlier on in that season. Mike McCarthy decided to switch things up, and that's starting with that Chargers game where you saw Brandon Cooks became more of a focal point of the offense as well. I'm going to say Jake Ferguson, tight end position, obviously. That's going to be the number 2 guy to me personally going forward. I feel like we're going to continue to feed him, and he's going to continue to eat some of these defenses alive if Mike McCarthy values the tight end position as much as we start to see that position grow in the Cowboys passing offense last season. But if you're going to talk about receivers, Brandon Cooks, that's a guy where he's, again, over a little, I guess you want to say older in the tooth, because, again, he's not old by any stretch, but, again, we're talking about in football years. I feel like, again, a guy like Brandon Cooks, especially in this draft, this is a deep wide receiver draft. You can find some guys that are going to be, I guess, real playmakers. I'm going to call real playmakers in the second, third round this year, and I believe you do not have to reach for anybody if you don't find that guy that you just love earlier on in that first round or second round or anything like that. So you're going to be able to find some guys. But Brandon Cooks, as great of a season he had, I'm going to say the Cowboys obviously are in a position to move on from that and upgrade that position a little bit more. Obviously, a guy like Jalen Tolbert, I believe he has about 2 years left with the Cowboys on contract. I believe he's due set to make a little bit over $1 million over these next couple seasons. So, still on a cheap rookie contract. Jalen Tolbert, this is going to be a big season for him because we already know Michael Gallup is no longer with this team. He's going to be a June 1st cut, and that's a guy that we're going to have to replace. Just although we've seen Michael Gallup, the injury history, the things that kind of deterred his game a little bit over the last few years, especially after signing that extension with the Cowboys. But we are now going to see, is Jalen Tolbert a guy that's going to be, I guess you want to say, an actual contributing member, I guess I'll say, to this wide receiver group going forward? Because now is the time for him to show it. Because if you're not one of those guys, it's going to be time to move on. Because now, all the cute stuff we've been doing with the rookie contracts, you had Dak Prescott obviously starting to make his real money. But CeeDee Lamb, those cheap contracts are over. Micah Parsons, those cheap contracts are over. You're about to have to pay big money for some of these players. And I'm not one of the guys that falls into the trap that this front office loves to sell sometimes, especially Stephen Jones, as if we don't have the money. We see throughout the entire league, players don't have money, the teams don't have money, front office say they don't have money, but they somehow still find the ability to be able to make some of these moves when the time calls for it. It's about being proactive, taking advantage and taking care of these things earlier, excuse me, much rather than later, which we've seen. They love to wait around until the last minute to see what they can actually get out of you. I don't ever feel like that's the right route to take. This CeeDee Lamb, we should have been looking to get this done about a year ago because you could see just the ability that he had, especially once you decided that you were going to move on from an Amari Cooper, or that you weren't, I guess you guys just weren't on the same page as a franchise and as the player alone. You should have been trying to get a CeeDee Lamb extension done because now you're putting yourself a little bit behind the gun, having to pretty much find yourself in a forced situation. If CeeDee Lamb comes out here and has an amazing year, the stock is just, and the price is just going to continue to rise, and you're going to have to pay crazy money to hang on to him. We already know you're still in that situation with a Michael Parsons on the other side of the ball. But this is about the wide receivers today. Michael Gallup is no longer going to be here. Jalen Tolbert going into, a couple years, few years into his rookie contract. Still another year or so left to be able to show what he can do. Brandon Cooks, this is now going to be his final year of the contract that he was already on. So he's going to be a free agent. Get this thing done. But luckily, like I said, this is going to be a very deep draft wide receiver wise. Let's take a look at some of these prospects that the Cowboys could find themselves having being able to get their hands on. Even really quickly, just looking at the stat sheet from last year from the wide receiver group, just a receiving package in general. CeeDee Lamb last season had I guess you want to say phenomenal type season. 181 targets, 135 catches, 1,749 yards, 12 total receiving touchdowns. Not along of 92 that we saw in that Detroit Lions game, a game that the Cowboys needed, but I mean, talking for playoff position, just a big game later in the season. This was just, again, an all-pro type season from CeeDee Lamb, and that's kind of what we expect from him going forward. This is a guy I have no worries about, but only thing, like I said, is getting this deal done. Obviously, we do know you're going to play hardball. Both sides don't want to give up everything that they're looking for, but at the end of the day, you have got to hang on to your playmakers because the game of football is about putting points on the board. And we know with CeeDee Lamb in this lineup, you're always going to have that ability to at least try to get that done. Jake Ferguson, like I said, running the show pretty much from the tight end position. I feel like he's going to be a major contributor going to the season. So potentially, I could see him having even more than 761 yards. 102 targets, 71 catches, 761 yards total, 5 receiving touchdowns. And we're talking about this is a guy, especially we saw in that postseason game, unfortunately against the Green Bay Packers, it was a little bit too late. I believe 2 or 3 touchdown catches in that postseason game against the Packers. Jake Ferguson, when you're continuing to just get him the ball early and often, I feel like he has another level to find and actually reach. And because over the last few seasons, you heard a guy like Travis Kelce. We do know the future Hall of Famer. Just again, arguably top 2, maybe the best tight end we've ever seen in this league. Statistically, at least we're going to be able to say that at the end when it's all said and done. A guy like Travis Kelce has spoken glowingly about Jake Ferguson, a guy one of those that he feels has the potential to be one of those next tight ends after him. So again, we're talking about it's not like you're having to throw everything the kitchen sink at the wide receiver position in this draft because you do have some playmakers ready-made in a Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb that can continue to carry the heavy load. But then we're talking about Brandon Cooks. Like I said, this is the last year of his deal. Michael Gallup will no longer be here. So we don't have to worry about any of that, the injuries, all those things. What he did put up last year, we don't have to worry about that. Michael Gallup will not be here, but Brandon Cook is going to the last year, and we're not even sure that he's going to be a guy that we bring back. Because when I will say, although he did give us some, I guess you want to say some plays last year, and some great plays, and that's more so in the second half of the season, with 657 yards total on 81 targets and 54 catches, 8 total receiving touchdowns, like I said, in that more so in that second half of the season. This is a guy I feel, even though he does still have some wiggle, he does still have some speed to get downfield, and he can make some plays, especially from the outside, from the slot. Depends how you use him. He plays much bigger than his small frame. This is a guy I feel like we can definitely still improve at that position. If you're talking about the second wide receiver, or just the guy that's going to be getting those second receiver targets and attention, because I've said Jalen Brooks, you're looking at a guy I spoke a little bit about last year during training camp. Jalen Brooks out of the University of South Carolina, one of our 7th round picks, I believe. Jalen Tolbert last year, 268 yards, on 22 catches, 36 targets, and 2 touchdowns. He did not have the big season I guess I was expecting him to have. And I don't mean big in the sense of we're talking about 1,000 yards or even 800, 700 yards. But I would have loved to see Jalen Tolbert find himself a little bit more involved. We did see him improve a little bit, just again with his connection and his chemistry with Dak Prescott. But I feel like Jalen Tolbert still has another level, or a couple levels that he can actually reach. But at the end of the day, you have to actually do it. So Brandon Cooks, like I said, that's a position I feel like the Cowboys definitely need to probably improve on if we're going to be able to be one of those teams that you say, even when things are not going well, everything is not completely going exactly how we would prefer, you still have guys that can somehow just get that ball and take it. We've seen CeeDee Lamb do that. He is a special playmaker. All it takes CeeDee Lamb is to find a little space, and he can go the distance. We've seen a guy like Jake Ferguson be able to make some of these big splash plays. What we haven't seen is us being able to consistently find that guy for our future that can play opposite, potentially, of a guy like CeeDee Lamb. So I feel like that's why this draft is going to be very big and deep for the Cowboys to focus on. So now we can take a look at those wide receiver prospects that will be in the draft. According to ESPN, the best available draft prospects, wide receivers in this upcoming 2024 NFL draft. Obviously, you're looking at Marvin Harrison Jr. Father is a long-time Indianapolis Colt, a Hall of Famer himself, great career. We know the special player that Marvin Harrison Sr. was. Marvin Harrison Jr. is pretty much in that same ilk. You look at Ohio State, he just dominated. And we're talking about, he looks to just be one of those special playmakers. And sometimes there are guys in this draft that you can obviously just look at and say, he's going to be a special player if he stays healthy. If he can just be in the right situation, he's going to be good to go. I feel like Marvin Harrison Jr. completely fits that bill. So now when you're looking at this, I guess you want to say the possible draft prospects for the Cowboys, obviously you're going to have to look past some of the top guys who are probably not going to be there, obviously, when you're looking at the Cowboys picking at 24th, or if you're talking about Cowboys looking for receivers in the 2nd, 3rd round. Marvin Harrison Jr. is not going to be there. Malik Neighbors out of LSU. Brian Thomas Jr. also from LSU, not going to be there. Rome Odunze, a special playmaker. It's just the tracking, just everything that he can do with his body. We're talking about pretty much saying receivers. These are the receivers we're saying. What are they good at? It's pretty much almost everything that you need a real receiver to be able to do. These guys can get it done. And so by the time you start getting to A.D. Mitchell, but one thing I will say quickly, obviously it doesn't matter what the publication you look for. You're looking at PFF, Pro Football Focus, you're looking at ESPN, CBS Sports, whatever you choose to look at. When you come to evaluating receivers, these draft, I'm guessing you're going to say this draft, to me personally, in my opinion, and also obviously by the national pundits and expert analysts in quotations, whatever that means. This looks to be a very deep wide receiver draft, and I'm talking about past even the top 9 guys, top 8, 9, 10 guys. But the top 9 on this list especially are looked at potentially as being top 36 potential, top 36 pick potential. And that just says, we're talking about close to pretty much saying this, you believe the top 9 or 10 guys are first-round picks in this league. That's just big. And obviously, we're talking about looking at some of these guys in A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell out of the University of Texas, formerly of the University of Georgia, 2 national championships as a Georgia Bulldog, transfers to the University of Texas, and we're looking for that guy to play opposite of an Xavier Worthy, who I'll talk about in a second too, also a former Texas Longhorn, and I'm a Texas Longhorn fan, so these are guys I'm very tapped into. Unfortunately, you already know these, lots of things for some reason, throughout I guess you want to say the last recent years, we've seen some of these prospects, as close as the draft gets, the closer it gets, you start to see sometimes these nasty, weird stories start to come out about players, and they're not even necessarily stories or narratives that have any legitimate backing or sources. And you hear A.D. Mitchell over the last few weeks for some reason. A quick rumor just came out. A.D. Mitchell, nobody's even really sure the source. A.D. Mitchell or Adonai Mitchell what exactly? I believe he battles with deals with diabetes, something like that, pretty much so. And he can get very agitated if he's not taking care of his body and things like that. He's not very coachable when he's like this. But if you talk to anybody from the University of Georgia, the University of Texas, everyone loves him. He's a hard worker. His teammates love him. The coaches love him. He's gonna go in there and give you what he has. And I'm gonna say, just you can go back to the number one thing I can talk about in AD Mitchell and say is just his body control. He surprised a lot of people running a 4.34 at this past draft, but he has the speed if you watch him actually on film. It's not always just about just being able to be one of those more physical size type receivers with the body control that he does have. He can actually get down the field and move around too. But I will say his ball adjustment, his adjustment and his ability to just track the ball. Go back to the Alabama game against the Crimson Tide this past season for the University of Texas. Deep ball. We have a quarterback in Quinn Ewers at the University of Texas. He loves to pretty much just put the ball in that area and see if his playmakers can make the play. A deep ball versus the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. You know how loud and rowdy that crowd can be. Just that environment in general. Deep ball. The ball sails a little bit out of control. I guess you want to say in quotations, whatever out of control is. Just put it in that area. A.D. Mitchell makes a great play on the ball, finds himself in the end zone. And also another game off the top of my head. I'm not remembering if it's Kansas State, TCU, one of these games. Late in the game, we needed a big play to pretty much clinch the victory, at least help get us a victory in this game. A.D. Mitchell, Quinn Ewers lays the ball up. A.D. Mitchell tracks it perfectly, falls backwards, catches it, and secures the first down. I'm saying this is a guy that if you're going to put him in the right situation, you're going to see exactly what pretty much, again, his former teammates, just the coaches that has actually got to be around him, will say. I feel like A.D. Mitchell next to a guy like CeeDee Lamb, I already talked about with Brandon Cooks, just the tutelage I feel like he still can bring as a mentor. If you're looking at just having a guy that's going to be running alongside, if we're able to get this deal done with a CeeDee Lamb, a Jake Ferguson, and A.D. Adonai Mitchell, this is going to be somebody that you can actually be able to tip your hat to. And I'm going to say, if you're looking at just the statistics that he put up last year in his long season at the University of Texas, last year, and we're talking about in more of a dual threat. We had more of a running game as well. And also, you did have a playmaker with the skill set of an Xavier Worthy. A.D. Mitchell last season, 55 catches, 845 yards, 11 total touchdown catches. Again, nothing to sneeze at. Also, you're looking at a guy like Xavier Legette out of University of South Carolina. More physical, but he shows he's and we're talking about a guy that's still, I believe, 6'1", 6'2", about 220 pounds. Very big, very physical, but he still, I believe, ran a 4.39, something speed like that at the combine. So this is a guy we're looking for to be able to say, if you want to see a guy that maybe can play similar to a guy like a Deebo Samuel or more, kind of just find his own footing. And we're going to say Dez Bryant. We remember those days where Dez Bryant is just a physical freak. You did not want to get one-on-one with him. You did not want to have small corners on him. And you couldn't necessarily just beat him with physical corners either. Yeah, this is going to be a guy like Xavier Legette. Again, a potential late first round, early second, maybe round guy that you're going to look up and say, this is a special player. I believe 6'3", 220 pounds is somewhere around there. He's a lot of that. So we're going to say Xavier Legette, his stats last year at the University of South Carolina in his final season, senior season, 71 catches, 1,255 yards, and 7 touchdowns. A guy, again, that you do not want to let slip away if he's on the board because, again, just the ability that he potentially could have. Obviously, we know the Cowboys need some offensive line help at this point. Obviously, we're going to have to shore up what our center position is. You're going to have to shore up, pretty much figure out what we're going to do with Tyler Smith, and if he's going to stay at guard, move out to left tackle to replace Tyron Smith, who is now the longtime Dallas Cowboy, many time All-Pro, now with the New York Jets. You're going to have to replace that. But at the end of the day, if you have some of these special players, you don't build teams in just 1 year. That's the number one thing, which is why years ago, if you remember, we took CeeDee Lamb. We had other things we probably could have taken, but we had CeeDee Lamb on the board at 17. He somehow slipped to us. You cannot let these players get away if you have the opportunity to grab them because of what they could bring to you in the future if you're able to shore everything else up around them. So playing, again, these guys we're looking at are going to be playing opposite of what we're talking about of a CeeDee Lamb, a Jake Ferguson, a Brandon Cooks, at least for this season. It's going to be very interesting to see who exactly the Cowboys are going to take a look at. Xavier Worthy, who now has the NFL record for the fastest time at an NFL combine with a 4.21 speed. Also, another former Texas Longhorn. And he came into the league, he came into college football, I'm going to say, for the University of Texas at a time where Texas was kind of teetering. We're just coming off a new coach now. What exactly are we going to do? What can Xavier Worthy bring to this team? And we saw from the jump, he came in his freshman year, 62 catches in 2021, 62 catches for 981 yards and 12 touchdowns. as a freshman. We're talking about a true freshman, not a red shirt freshman. You're in college for a year just learning. No, he came into the game with his playmaking ability. You've seen many times, I guess, over the number one thing you kind of worry about a little bit with Xavier Worthy sometimes is just the untimely drops. But he has this crazy playmaking ability that he always makes up for it. But the number one thing, it also comes out that he was dealing with a broken hand. So that seemed like it could have been a lot of the reasoning for some of these just weird drops, because you'll see him. He'll make these splash plays and then something like that will happen. But I don't think it's anything that any NFL team should be worried about going forward, because you're going to be around better players. You're going to be around a lot of times, sometimes better coaching, just because more experienced coaching, I guess I'll call it. Just more experienced coaching in the NFL. And then you're going to be talking about, you're just going to be around some of these older veterans that are going to be able to help your game. So if you're looking at getting a guy like an Xavier Worthy, 6'1", 172 pounds, that's the biggest thing. A lot of people kind of worrying about his size. He's a little smaller in just his stature. So you have to worry about the physicality of the game. But if you're going to put him in slot, you're going to be able to move him around a little bit. I feel like you're going to naturally put on some weight. If you can get an Xavier Worthy to about 180, 185 consistently, you're going to have a great special playmaker. I'm not calling him Tyreek Hill because he does have that speed. We're talking about now has the NFL record for the fastest 40 time of all time with a 4.21. That's not an anomaly. He has that special playmaking ability. You saw many times at the University of Texas. Sometimes we could just dump him off a screen. If he makes one guy miss, you are going to literally see the rest of the defense just having to chase him, because he's taking it to the house. Just let that be very clear. Xavier Worthy, he's one of those special players. You can kind of liken to the ilk, I guess I'll say, maybe of a Deshaun Jackson to me, with a little bit more, I guess, growth in his game that he can find. And Deshaun Jackson, we saw him have so many splash plays in this league. He's more so of a downfield speed guy. I feel like Xavier Worthy can probably add a little bit more to his game earlier on. So if you're able to see the Cowboys with a late first round pick, because we do know sometimes the Cowboys, Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones, they do love to trade back if they don't find a special guy that they just naturally had on their own draft board earlier on. You can see the Cowboys moving back a couple picks. We are sitting from 24 right now, move back to 26, 28, something like that, picking up another pick and still being able to take a guy like Xavier Worthy. Then you're going to be able to say the Cowboys are in good position. Like I said, but last year, going into his last season, his junior season at the University of Texas, 75 catches, playing opposite of an A.D. Mitchell. 75 catches, 1,014 yards, and 5 receiving touchdowns. What was it? I believe this is just, again, one of those guys you're going to say, get the ball to Xavier Worthy. We're going to find ourselves saying that a lot if he's able to join this receiver group, this receiver room, I guess I'll say. But like I said, many different directions we can take it. Let's get into it again. Keon Coleman, I believe it comes out that he's a cousin of CeeDee Lamb. So that's just another weird twist, I guess we can kind of throw in the mix. But this is a guy, he transfers. He ends up at the University of Florida State last year. And we saw they had some injuries at the quarterback position. Because earlier on, Florida State was one of those teams that people were going to see, are they going to be in the college football playoff? And a lot of it had to do with Keon Coleman. We're talking about a guy that's like 6'3", 6'4", 210, 215 pounds. This is a guy last year, 50 catches in his final season in college. 50 catches, 658 yards, 11 total touchdowns. I'm not worried about the numbers if you're looking for these gaudy college numbers, because we know at the end of the day, college football is up in the air. Sometimes it's going to not necessarily be about what you did statistically. It's going to be a lot about what is your skill set. What do I see? Do I think you have more to unlock? And I feel like, again, putting Keon Coleman next to a guy like CeeDee Lamb, next to a guy like Jake Ferguson, next to a guy like Brandon Cooks, who will be here at least for this year. Let's see what we get out of a Jalen Tolbert. Just putting him in a system that's going to be completely opened up. If we're able to have a consistent quarterback play this season, the Cowboys are going to be in good position if you're able to grab a guy like a Keon Coleman. So do not fret about or worry about anything about his speed or anything like that. He's going to be more of your physical guy, but I feel like he still has some things that he can unlock in his game as well. So Ricky Pearsall, these are some guys that I'm going to say now you start to teeter around a little bit and maybe say, okay, mid-second, maybe he's mid-second to third round. These are a couple guys that I'm going to talk about that I'm very, 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 very interested in. When you're going to say what exactly a Ricky Pearsall, University of Florida, a fifth year senior last year. You're looking at his 5th year in college. We're talking about 2023, 65 catches, 965 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns, an average of 14.8 yards. But the year before that, in 2022, 20 yards per catch average on 33 catches for 661 yards and 5 touchdowns. This is a guy I'm going to say you're going to be looking around a little bit more to find, just, I guess you want to say, one of those guys that has just some experience. Sometimes those are the guys that can be very tricky. You get them in your system, and now you're not having to worry about trying to teach them every little simple aspect of the receiver position. Some guys just completely rely on just their athletic ability. I don't feel like Ricky Pearsall is one of those guys. He's going to be able to just have a little bit more expensive experience coming into this thing. But also at the end of the day, you're also going to have to be able to put the work in. Brendan Rice, University of USC. This is probably my most interesting prospect, I'm going to say, because again, obviously the last name is very familiar because it's Jerry Rice's son. And just having the GOAT, the arguably is probably one of the best players to just play football in history, NFL history. But Jerry Rice, the GOAT receiver in the league, believed by many, his son, you're naturally going to be able to pick up on some of those things that he can actually do. We're talking about a guy, he's not the fastest in the world, but 6'3", 210 pounds. Last year at the University of Southern California, USC, 45 catches, 791 yards, 12 total touchdown catches, 17.6 yards per catch. This is not anything to sneeze at. And I'm going to say, sometimes to me, it's just a small detail that you're able to pick up on. You have your dad being Jerry Rice, and one of the biggest things Jerry Rice always gets lauded and a lot of credit for is that he paid attention to detail. If his son picks up any of that stuff, I'm talking about just even picks up on any bit of just what you can kind of use going forward and just being a rookie. Because the number one thing you're talking about when you're looking for rookie statistics and things to be able to come in and contribute, you're looking for guys that are able to be just quick learners, because you're going to have to pick up the NFL game fairly quickly because the game moves so fast. It's not the same as college, where a lot of the guys that you're playing against on the defensive side might not even make it to the league. And to get to the NFL, you're playing against the best of the best. These guys are defensive technicians. They understand body positioning. They understand how to cut off routes. So you want guys that kind of have just that natural pedigree. And talking about Brendan Rice, this is one of my exciting, just random prospects that if you're actually able to try to just make one of those plays that you're going to look up years later and say, how exactly did we get him late mid second, third round? Brendan Rice is going to be one of those. And my last two guys, actually, I have a couple more guys, but these two guys right here, next to Rome Odunze from the University of Washington, created this trifecta that Michael Penix Jr. You wonder why the Washington Huskies threw the ball so much? Because they had a loaded wide receiver room. We could talk about Jalen McMillan, who the year prior, he dealt with some injuries this past season, unfortunately, but the year prior in 2022, 79 catches, 1,098 yards, a long of 84, and 9 touchdown catches. And last season, although he did miss some time, and a couple other guys, another guy that I'm going to talk about right after this, got himself involved in the mix a little bit more. Jalen McMillan still was able to come back and be a key contributor to that wide receiver room, helping them get to the college football playoffs and find themselves making it to the national championship game. 45 catches, 559 yards, and 5 touchdowns last year. This is a guy that if he's able to just be healthy, he's going to be good to go. I'm not really worried about the fact he's leaving his junior year, because this probably could have been a guy maybe you ask. You come back another year, you see what exactly you have being maybe one of those more predominant guys. And now you're no longer having a Rome Odunze there. You're no longer going to have this next guy, Jalen Polk, taking targets away from you. He could put up some gaudy numbers, but he feels he's ready, and I feel like he has the ability. So if you go watch just his film from this past season and the year before then, you're going to see a special player in a Jalen McMillan. Now also, Jalen Polk, right after another teammate of Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan. We're talking about a guy last year, Jalen McMillan, dealing with some injuries, who somebody else had to step up. And Jalen Polk did just that. 69 catches last season, 1,159 yards, 9 touchdowns, a long of 92, and a 16.8 catch average. This is a guy we're talking about. These are just some players, and he's from Lufkin, Texas. So these are some guys, the Texas bred type players. I love those guys because a lot of times we find some hard workers. And one thing is for sure, if you're going to find yourself just these playmakers and playing for the Dallas Cowboys, what's the number one thing you're always going to have to worry about? Guys coming in and being able to shut out some of that noise. I feel like Jalen Polk is going to be able to do that because he has a skill set that is going to be able to easily just convert to the NFL. So the Cowboys are, I guess you want to say they're in a perfect position, because we're talking about maybe in that second, third round, if you're able to see things continue to drop, because although there are many very highly draftable receivers in this draft, you still never know if any team is looking at is that their need. per se. So we'll see how exactly this goes. But the Cowboys are going to have lots of potential to be able to grab one of these special playmakers. And the last guy I want to talk about really quick is Malik Washington from the University of Washington. Last year, we're talking about in a fifth year, been in college for 5 years. This is a guy, sometimes it takes them a little bit of time to develop their game. He's more of that smaller type. We're talking about 5'8", 194 pounds. But last year, 110 catches. I believe he led the ACC in total catches. 110 catches, 1,426 yards, and 9 touchdowns. These are just some guys, I'm going to say maybe you can liken them to maybe the way a role that a Brandon Cooks was kind of used a little bit. But again, a Malik Washington, these are just some guys that you're going to be able to kind of look. You're going to hear these names thrown out at you in the next coming days, the next few days. So keep an eye on a Malik Washington on University of Washington, because I feel like he could definitely also be a contributor for the Cowboys if that's the route we choose to take in this upcoming draft. The most exciting thing about the Dallas Cowboys and this upcoming NFL draft, the 2024 NFL draft, is that there's just so many different approaches this team can take, because there are some needs for this team, so you never know. But if we're talking about focusing on the wide receiver position, there are many guys that can come in and contribute for the Dallas Cowboys in year one. I truly believe in this draft because it is so deep, and there are so many different, I guess you want to say, so many different styles of receiver in this draft as well. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. The NFL draft will be right around the corner. We will be going live. I believe me and my guy Ryan will be on here going live on NFL draft night, the first round on Thursday night, April 25th. So tune in, stay tuned for the notifications for the update for when exactly we'll be going live. But I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, share. Let me know down below in the comment section if there's anybody I didn't talk about and any receivers that you personally would like the Cowboys to take a look at if they're still on the board when the draft is able to, when our draft picks are able actually to come into fruition. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go and like, comment, subscribe, and share once again. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.